Hey guys, it's Miss Johnson here. I'm here to take you through your 7-6 notes video for today. Today we are talking about rational exponents, exponents that are ratios, and how do we look at them, how do we interpret them, what can we do with them. Your first example up at the top says, simplify b to the 1/2 squared. Well, how could we do that? Think about squaring something. When we square something, that means we're multiplying it by itself 2 times. So I have b to the 1/2 times itself. Well, we all know that when we take powers and we multiply them together, that means we add their exponents. So this is the same thing as b to the 1/2 plus 1/2. And b to the 1/2 plus 1/2 is b to the first, which is the same thing as just b. Okay, another way that we can think about that is we can think of a power of a power. We know that when we take power of a power, b to the 1/2 squared would mean that I need to multiply my powers. So that would be b to the 1/2 times 2, and 1/2 times 2 again is to the first, so that ends up giving us again just b. So using both of those properties of exponents that we've seen before, we end up getting an answer that is just b to the first power, or b. Now here's how rational exponents turn into radical expressions. When we have a rational exponents, in other words, b to the 1 over n power, that means that this n ends up being the index of my radical. So I have an index of n, and underneath I have a b. Okay, so b to the 1 over n means that I took the nth root of b. Okay, when I take a look at an example, I have 8 to the 1/3 power. This is the same as saying I have the third root of 8. And the third root of 8 is what number multiplies by itself 3 times to give us 8. That gives us 2. 2 to the third power is equal to 8. So the third root of 8 is 2. Let's take a look at number 1. It says write in radical form. And if I was going to write this in radical form, 4, again, that denominator becomes my index. So I'm looking at the fourth root of a. Okay, the fourth root of a there. Same thing with x to the 1/5. For x to the 1/5, I turn that into the fifth root of x. Okay, so 5, that denominator becomes the index. Now if I go backwards and start with radical form, I'm looking at the third root of y. The third root of y, remember that this is the denominator. So that's the denominator of my exponent. That means I have y to the 1/3 power. Okay, so I can go in both directions. I can start in rational form and write it in radical form, and I can also start in radical form and go back to the rational exponent. If I take a look at number 4 and I try to simplify 16 to the negative 1/4 power, think of what that means. That means I have the fourth, I have that negative exponent. Remember that means we're going to move it down below. So I end up with 1 over 16 to the positive 1/4 power. But that 16 to the 1/4 power is the same thing as the fourth root of 16. Okay, the fourth root of 16, we can all figure out, you can plug that into your calculator, is 2. So this is the same thing as just saying 1/2. 16 to the negative 1/4 power is the same as 1/2. Okay, now for rational exponents, when I have a different number in that numerator now, take a look at what that does to my power. So remember back to 8 to the 1/3 power that we just looked at, ended up being the third root of 8. Well, that 8 is raised to the first power. Now, what happens if I now have 8 raised to the 2/3 power? I still have the third root, but now I'm looking at 8 squared. So that numerator becomes the power that's underneath the radical. Okay, if I look at that in terms of notation, that means this is still my index, and this is now the power underneath. So I'm looking at the nth root of b to the m power, which is also the same thing as saying the nth root of b all raised to the m power. Okay. Let's take a look at number 5 and see if we can figure that out there. Now I'm looking at 243 raised to the 3/5 power. If I change that into radical form, that means I have the 5th root of 243 to the 3rd power. That's the same thing as saying the 5th root of 243 all raised to the 3rd power. Well, this I can plug into my calculator. When I find the 5th root of 243, I'm looking at 3. So I have 3 raised to the 3rd power, which 3 raised to the 3rd power is the same thing as saying 27. Okay, so turning those rational exponents into radical form. In number 6, now I'm starting with radical form and I want to turn it back into a rational exponent. Remember that this is going to be your denominator and this is now your numerator of the fractional exponent, the rational exponent. So y is my base, my exponent is 4/6. Okay. All right, so that's going to take us through the basics of converting rational exponents into radical form. And we're going to stop our video there for today. Thanks for listening. We'll come back together tomorrow and finish up the back of our notes. Thanks for watching.